Chris Edwards, welcome to the show. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Appreciate you having me.
So you're currently the owner of a flooring company called Affordable Floor Warehouse, and you have a really interesting ETA journey that I want to get into, but maybe start with your background. What were you doing before discovering ETA?
Yeah, I was a couple of stops. I was in corporate finance out of college, so did FP&A and a number of different kind of like financial related things for a company called Zayo, which was a telecom roll-up. Ultimately IPO'd and was one of the biggest IPOs in Colorado history, just rolling up telecom assets across the country. So got a lot of exposure to financial modeling and value creation through acquisitions in that stop. And then it was in the consulting world. So it was at Slalom Consulting and then Deloitte Consulting, and did Salesforce.com projects mostly, and learned a lot about, going into a new company, learning quickly, figuring out where we can add value, bring sort of a technology mindset to operational improvements. So FP&A and consulting were kind of my two big stops before I quit my job in 2020 to go acquire a business.
So how did search and ETA get on your radar?
I was looking for a way out of consulting and corporate America in general, and stumbled across ETA Twitter, really, and started following some of the journeys of the guys that were doing it, and kind of a sort of similar path as many people. I read the Harvard Business Review book and sort of the other classics, Fight and Build, and ultimately decided that was a route that I wanted to go. Thought that my sort of financial engineering background, FP&A background, coupled with my consulting, kind of gave me a pretty good foundation to go do something like this. And so I quit my job in October of 2020 to do a search. Ultimately got under LOI pretty quickly with Affordable Flooring Warehouse in about November of 2020. Closed in February of 2021. So it was a really quick search and process for me. And then I was off to the races.
And you did a self-funded?
Self-funded, yep.
Did you consider the traditional search fund approach?
Not really. I wanted to, have a larger slice of the equity pie, and had, earned a little bit of equity capital that I felt could be big enough when coupled with SBA loan to buy something sizable enough that it made sense for me. So didn't really want to go the search route and raise money and look for something a little bit bigger. My sort of philosophy was to buy something a little bit smaller, something that made sense for me, that was financially accretive. And that's ultimately what I did.
So how did you land on that first company, Affordable Flooring? Were you looking for something kind of in that specific industry?
No, I was industry agnostic. I looked at all sorts of different deals, and ultimately this deal made sense. It was in Steamboat Springs, which is, I was living in Denver at the time. Steamboat Springs is up in the mountains of Colorado. Love the area, love the sort of geographic moat that it provided. Not a ton of competition up there. And I thought it made sense. It was like a industry, a business that I felt like I could learn relatively quickly. It wasn't overly complicated, didn't require some technical certification or anything like that. Yeah, for a number of reasons, I thought it made sense. It was within my sort of buy box in terms of the financial profile, the revenue, the EBITDA that it was spinning off. And so for a lot of reasons, I thought it made sense. And so I pulled the trigger.
Was it a broker deal?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's a typical story where the owner is looking to retire?
Yep. Owner looking to retire, was having some health problems, no real succession plan in place. So he was looking to find someone to take it off his hands.
I'm curious, tell me about the business. What did they do? How many employees did they have when you took over?
It was mostly a residential remodel business. It was also a sizable cash and carry business. So it's kind of a mix. Like it was sort of like a supply house for the Yampa Valley. So we had a lot of like flooring supplies, and a lot of contractors came and bought flooring supplies from us, a lot of tile supplies, things of that nature. So given that, Denver's 3.5 hours away, we had, a little bit of we had a nice cash and carry business where we would buy supplies in Denver, store them in our warehouse. People come and buy it from us. but then also, a installation business where, we would go do carpet jobs, LVT jobs, tile jobs, mostly residential focused, did some commercial work as well, but mostly residential remodel work was our installation business.
I'm curious, how did you think about the growth opportunities for the business? I don't know anything, and I'm just kind of thinking as you're describing this. I've been to Steamboat; it's relatively small, right? So the number of remodels and the number of new construction is going to be somewhat definable, right? And you can kind of the steps I'm talking about and figure out your total addressable market. Tell me, how did you think about growing in that area?
Yeah, I never thought that this is going to be like a 10x business where we're going to take it from 3 million to 30 million. It's just the market's not that big. There's only like 10, 12,000 full-time residents, and then you have people coming in and out. But yeah, I mean, I never thought of it as like as a huge growth opportunity. I thought of it more of it as like, I can generate a lot of cash from this business, and I think that I can improve the operations. I think that I can grow it, modestly. And we did. I mean, we grew the revenue about 50% from about 3 million to like 4.5 million. So yeah, it wasn't like a huge growth story. I wasn't kind of underwriting that, but I thought that, there was growth in the Yampa Valley. There was a good amount of building happening, not a lot of well-established, contracting businesses like that. So yeah, I thought it was really just kind of a good opportunity to grow from the good salary that I was making in corporate, and grow this business into a nice, I would say, lifestyle business. Not like a huge enterprise, and probably wasn't going to grow to like multiple locations or anything like that, but was a good opportunity for me to learn SMB, learn how to operate a business, and hopefully spin off a good amount of cash in the meantime.
So you were going into it expecting to hold it for some extended time period and not planning to flip it, for lack of a better term.
I didn't plan on, my original plan going into it was hold it indefinitely. Now I'm always willing to be opportunistic. If I felt like it was a good time to sell, that I would do that. And that's ultimately what I did do. I sold it, last year in October of 2024. Felt like it was just for a number of reasons, made sense personally, professionally. And so I was opportunistic with selling the business, and felt like it was a good time for a number of reasons, and wanted to take the lessons that I had learned in that business, apply it to a new concept, a new brand, a new business, and start from scratch. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing a startup, and but it was a great ride at Affordable Flooring. Grew it quite a bit and learned a lot in the process, and here we are today.
Yeah. Before we get into your startup, if you don't mind sharing, I've heard you discuss it in other platforms. It was an incredible return on investment.
Yeah, it's great. Ultimately ended up being like a 24x MOIC. A lot of that's because it was very leveraged. I put 10% down, 10% seller note, 80% SBA debt. So yeah, it was great. I mean, we spun off a lot of cash from when I bought it to when I ultimately sold it. Grew the enterprise value pretty significantly just by way of growing revenue 50%. We grew EBITDA a bit, basically doubled it 100%. So yeah, it was a really great return on investment, life-changing kind of outcome, and worked out great.
Who was the acquirer?
It's a couple that was living in like Aspen Valley, right? Vale Valley, around there. He had a lot of contracting experience, worked for a big builder down there, and was looking for kind of a similar thing that I was, looking to buy a company and to get into the ETA world. So yeah, it was a younger couple and had a lot of construction experience. Thought it was a good fit for, given their background. They had a lot of small business exposure. So yeah, they were a good fit for what we were looking for.
That's interesting. I haven't heard a lot of stories where the exit occurs essentially to another searcher, right? Or another ETA type process. And I'm not going to pry for any of the financials, of course, but I'm just trying to do some of the math quickly in my head. And it just sort of sounds at first pass that your business might have been at a different scale than what you typically see acquired by a fellow searcher.
Like it was too small. Is that what?
Like it's too big,
No, too big.
upon exit.
I mean, if we were doing like 1.1 million of SDE, like a lot of searchers are kind of looking for that sort of that Harvard Business Review type of box of 750 to 1.5 million. So, I mean, I think it was, it's big for some people for, like, as far as like raising SBA debt goes, it's, on the bigger side, I would say for sure. But yeah, I think for a lot of reasons, it was a good fit. Yeah.
And again, we don't hear a lot of stories, at least I don't, of folks that have gone through an exit. Would you mind sharing how that went for you? Like how long was it, like really emotional and intense, or how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was good. We put the business up for sale in, I think it was May of 2024, and we closed in October. Maybe it was a little bit earlier. Like we put it up in April or something like that. April of 2024. It closed in October of 2024. Got a good amount of interest. We got a lot of LOIs, and yeah, I mean, for me, it was a really positive experience. There's always emotions with these types of deals, and there's highs and lows, and there's some moments where you think the deal might be dead, kind of thing. But got through it, and it was emotional for me for sure. Like I had gone through a lot from when I bought the business. I mean, it was only 3.5 years that I owned it, but I still gone through a lot. I got married. I had 2 kids in that time frame. My dad passed away. Just a lot of stuff like happened in between from when I bought it to when I sold it. So it was definitely a emotional type of, like once the deal was done and it closed, there's definitely a lot, like a release of emotions. And I put a lot of work into it. It was blood, sweat, and tears for 3.5 years to get it to where we got it. And a lot of stressful nights, sleepless nights, painful moments, but ultimately it ended up in a really great outcome. And I'm grateful for the experience, and felt like I grew a lot through it. And so ultimately it was positive. There is sort of like a emotional sort of, I'd say, like crash after, the sale has gone through, and you're kind of like, you go home on a Wednesday, like, what am I supposed to do today? So there's a little bit of like purpose sort of, you have to like continuously find like how you're going to contribute and add value and add purpose to your life. I mean, luckily I had 2 little kids, and, my second daughter was born, a few months before that. So I was pretty busy with that. I gave my life a lot of purpose, but it was nice to be able to like go enjoy Steamboat and go skiing more, and like, get outside and like actually do stuff that like I wasn't really able to do when I was running the business because I was so busy. So it was great. Ultimately, Ned, it was an awesome experience. It felt great to get like a win under my belt like that, where a big return and like successful story, and the headline number of like 24x MOIC. You got like Acquiring Minds asking about it and stuff like that. So like there's it was overall a very positive experience, and like I said, it's nice to have a W under your belt like that.
Yeah, for sure. Since you've had both perspectives, a buyer and a seller, are there any key takeaways or things you might point out to folks when they are going in through that selling process of their business?
I think, I don't know, for on the selling side, I think you need to be ready to see a lot of changes come, and that can be uncomfortable to watch someone do that. Someone paid good money for your business, and you need to, like, I would say it's that they probably have some changes that they want to make day one, and that can be something that you need to kind of be comfortable with and support them through that. So it's kind of an interesting, kind of wild experience to watch someone take your baby and make a lot of changes to it, and some things you might think are good, some things you might not think are so good. So got to be ready for that. And I think you just need to understand like who the buyer is and their motivations, and try to help them be successful in whatever outcome they're trying to get towards. So like when I was on the buying side, it was the sellers that I was buying from were very emotional, very like big deal, like this was their baby that they had built from scratch, and like emotions were flying really high. For me, it wasn't quite as emotional. I don't feel like I was quite as like attached to the business or the brand. Is kind of more just like a little bit more transactional for me, So just, yeah, I'd say just understand who is sitting across from you at the table, and try to just be on the same side of the table throughout the negotiation process, and try to get to outcomes that are both successful for both of you. And just try to be collaborative in your negotiation process.
It's interesting with your sellers, and you described the high emotions. Do you think, did the emotions get so high that alone perhaps put the deal at jeopardy at any time? Because I had a similar situation acquiring this business. As the founder, emotions got high several times, whereas, on my side, I'm pretty emotionless, right? It's just, you're in transaction mode, right? You're not selling something you created or buying something. So I'm just curious, did the emotions get so strong that it put the deal at jeopardy?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. There's a number of times where it's like, this deal's dead, and no coming back from whatever happened on that phone call. But yeah, there was a number of times where I thought the deal was dead, came back around. I mean, that's what brokers are for, to like make sure that there's everyone's level headed and get back on track. If there's a misstep or something was said during a phone call, it can get messy for sure. But yeah, there was definitely a number of times where emotions got so high that it was like, okay, we're done here. So, yeah, but you have to understand, like, especially in this like lower middle market space, it's a knife fight out there, and these people have been working really hard to build their business to where it is today. And that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. Really difficult to build businesses that are successful and even sellable, so they put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you got to respect that and try to understand like where there's red flags in their emotions and where there's, maybe not red flags. Like they're just getting worked up. I would say like if they're getting emotional a lot and it's over the top and it feels like it's a little much, then there's probably that same type of emotion embedded in their culture. And you're probably walking into a highly emotional culture. Like if they're behaving this way to you during a, seller phone call, then they're probably behaving the same way during their day-to-day meetings with their team members. And that's probably instilled and embedded into their culture. So what you're seeing, during the buying process is probably what you're going to see when you ultimately start running the company and you start to get to know the employees that are there and the systems that are there. And you'll see their fingerprints all over the place, and how they behave during the selling process is indicative of how of how they ran their business.
So I'm guessing that's what you found.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't mind sharing, because this is really interesting to me, like what did that look like in practicality with the owner has that personality? What did that show up like in employees? I've talked to other folks about this, and my situation's similar. I think it's a generational thing, right? Like the generation before us is very like command and control, Jack Welch style, yell and scream, however you want to describe it. But that's not the style of our generation. Totally different approach to leadership. So what did it look like in your company?
I would just say that when issues arose, the default sort of position to take was like blow up with emotion. Like when a problem happened, it was like the sky is falling, and they didn't approach it with sort of like a problem solving mindset. It was like just getting worked up and getting emotional and like berating the customer, or, like talking about, he picked up the phone one time and started yelling at the customer, like in front of me. I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, you can't do that. This is my business now. Like, you can't behave like that. Just stuff like that. And I'm trying to think. Just the employees that were there. It wasn't like, this problem happened. How do we fix the root cause of it? How do we build a system or a SOP or something just so like this doesn't happen again? Like, we understand problems are going to happen. Let's just figure out the root cause of it. nip it in the bud so it doesn't happen again and move on, and just solve the problem and move on. But oftentimes there's like the same issues happening over and over again, and it's a blow up of emotion and a meltdown. And like, I gotta jump into therapist mode for key employees that are like melting down. And I felt like there's a lot, like most of my job the first year was like managing emotions. And while I'm trying to figure out the business, while I'm trying to learn how flooring works and how the industry works and how to like run a flooring store, which takes time, I'm also at the same time just trying to keep the train on the tracks by not having, our installers, our management melt down all the time. So yeah, it was difficult. It was, there's a lot of turnover the first year or two. So I'd be ready for that. I'd be ready just to, like, you seem like a pretty calm and collected guy. Like if the seller is a hothead, then the people that work in that business are used to being managed by a hothead, and they probably like that. Or otherwise they wouldn't be there. Right. So like once a calm and collected guy comes in, they're like, they don't like that. It's not what they're used to. It's kind of like, an abusive cycle where like people like are attracted to what they already know, So yeah, I'd just be ready for that. So understand the personality of the seller, their leadership style is probably indicative of how they're behaving on the transaction is indicative of their leadership style. And the people that are in the business are clearly attracted or want to be a part of that leadership style. And if yours is different, then you're probably going to have turnover.
I think that's really insightful comment. And I've heard this from other folks in our positions who had similar outcomes, but not described in the way that you're doing there, is to really pay attention to the seller's personality, because of exactly what you just said. It's going to translate to somehow into the business. And, I've heard a lot of stories recently where it's not uncommon that, just like you, in that first year, a huge portion of the staff might turn over because they're used to and want to work for a certain type of personality, just as you described. I think that's really insightful commentary.
Yeah. Yeah. So just be careful of that. One thing I always tell people in this space or looking to do an acquisition like this, is there's probably one or two people that are really running the business. These key employees you got to find the key employees in the company and figure out what you can about them. Oftentimes the key employees are held close to the chest, and you're probably not going to get a lot of insight into them or even meet them before you buy the business. So if these key employees leave, like, are you screwed? Are you not screwed? Like, can you fight your way out of that? So really get to know or try to dig into key employees, because if they leave or they take their crew with them, or their book of business with them, is that something that makes the deal a deal breaker?
So you had this incredible success over a handful of years, hard fought success. We know, as you just described, running a small business is really, really tough. And then you have some time off, and now you're focusing on a startup, it sounds like. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I took some time off. I did some consulting work, working for a couple of businesses, small businesses, helping them with their sort of processes and trying to bring my experience from affordable flooring to their businesses. So I did some consulting work shortly after the transaction. But yeah, I took some time off, did a lot of skiing, hung out with my family. Ultimately, we moved down from Steamboat down to the Front Range again. So I'm outside of Boulder, Colorado. And so I'm doing a startup, starting a new flooring store in Boulder. And looking to parlay the experience that I had at Affordable Flooring and build a new concept, new brand, new marketing strategy, lead gen strategy, and build something from scratch. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like this time around, I would rather build something from scratch instead of acquire someone else's hornet's nest of culture and and bad processes and whatever. I think I sort of, in the buy versus build equation, am leaning more towards building this time around. And, even though it worked out great for me to buy a company and to sell it, it was an awesome experience and really great outcome. This time around, I'd rather, build it right from the beginning, not be worried about debt servicing, not have a big SBA note hanging over my head, and just sort of slowly build it the way that I think would be most advantageous long term.
So how far along are you in that startup process?
We're pretty far along. Yeah, we have a showroom in Boulder. We are going to open up in the next, I would say, three weeks to a month here. We're just finishing up our tenant improvements, so working with the contractor to build out this showroom. It's a small space, but yeah, we're reaching out to a lot of personas that we're targeting for the business. Contractors, GCs, realtors, building relationships with them. And, we're getting good traction. We've already had a pretty good amount of sales, even without even having a showroom open, just operating out of my garage, basically, and getting going. So yeah, we're pretty far along and looking forward to opening our first store in about a month.
That's really cool. I'm curious, that early success, even before having a store, what do you think's going on there? Because I've been to Boulder as well. It's bigger than Steamboat. I just imagine that there's a handful of companies similar to this in the area.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of competition for sure. There's a lot of entrenched incumbents. There's a lot of competition for sure. So it's a very different thing that we're doing this time around. So we're, instead of, taking someone's operation and growing it that already has substantial market share of a small market, we're trying to take market share in a bigger market. So it's going to be an uphill battle for sure. There's a lot of great companies that are already doing it. I would say it's not probably the most ideal time to be opening a home improvement business. There's a lot of that demand was kind of pulled forward in COVID. And, I think people just more generally are kind of reluctant to spend a lot of money right now. I think there's a lot of apprehension in the economy, but given that, I still think that we can take market share. I think that we're doing things hopefully materially better than our competitors. There's a lot of like older sort of flooring store owners that have been around a long time. And I would say, not to like downplay my competition, but I would say that there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily like working super hard on growing their business and like hustling. I think that a lot of people are pretty content with what they've got. And I think that there's some complacency probably, and we could probably, my thesis is that we can go steal market share and do enough that we can build a viable business in a bigger market.
That's awesome. Does anything like really stand out to you at this point of, startup versus the existing company?
I would say that's, yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of differences. I mean, starting up is a very difficult thing. It's hard to get your name out there, to build trust, to build awareness, to get your foot in the door in these personas that we're talking about. But, this time around, I have a partner, she is doing a great job, like getting out there and networking with these types of personas. And she's a sales savage. And, I feel like, she's a really great person to be in my corner. I also have another partner that's focused on marketing, which has been great. So, I've got two people in my corner, which is nice. I would say that when I bought affordable flooring, I honestly didn't really know what I was doing. I was like drinking from the fire hose and trying to figure it out. And you're trying to just get your feet under you and not make yourself look like an idiot when you talk to a customer. So I feel much more comfortable this time around. I feel like I know the industry. I feel like I know the ways to be successful. I know I have a lot of good contacts in the business now. Suppliers are willing to work with me, which is great. So yeah, it's a very different challenge. Starting from scratch is a very tough thing to do, but I'm excited about it. I would say it's less risk. I don't have a huge SBA note over me, so I'm not like losing sleep about debt, which is good. And, I have a little bit of money from the exit that I feel like it's okay. I can, take a little bit. I took a bunch of chips off the table. I can put some chips back on the table now and build it right, build the systems correctly, and just do a great job from the outset.
That's awesome, Chris. What a fun journey, and get to do all the different fun things, buy a business, start a business. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love buying. I still think there's a good chance that we buy something in the future. I think what I want to do is get really, really good at organic growth. And once I kind of figure out the organic growth playbook a little bit better, then you can I think you can justify acquisitions more once you kind of have a really robust organic growth playbook.
Well, if you would like for folks to be able to find you, how would you like them to find you?
Yeah, I mean, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat with searchers or whoever wants to connect. And Twitter, I'm on Twitter. My handle is Toph, TOPH_Edwards. If you want to, follow me along there.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you sharing your story and spending a little bit of time with me.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Good talking to you.